Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are on this planet. We're here for another edition of WOWSA Live, brought to you by Ned Denison in Cork, Ireland.
Hello, everyone. As an introduction, I'm an epic marathon swimmer with more than 50 big swims to my name. I'm also currently the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. I had the pleasure of meeting our next guest partway through the SCAR 4-day challenge. He avoided the first couple of swims, if I remember right, and showed up for breakfast and a bit of paddle. I'll turn over to Darren, and I'll ask him to make his introduction at least 5 times longer than mine. Because he has a varied and unusual sporting background.
Ned, Steve, thank you for having me today. Coming to you from sunny Southern California out in the desert of Palm Springs. It's about 102 degrees every day now, and man, I'm sweating. I'm a polar bear. I wish I could be just floating around in the North Sea right now. That's for sure. But thanks for having me on today. Yeah, my background is pretty. It's definitely a little bit more interesting than most, I guess. But just from where I came from as a pool swimmer growing up, 50 freestyle. That was about the extent of my long distance efforts growing up. I went to college at Penn State, swam a couple years. After that, I graduated and I got into basically strongman competition, I guess you could say. Ended up being about 200, close to 270 pounds when I quit that right around 2006, 2007. I was at that dark point in my life I think a lot of people go through. You know, you're kind of lost a little bit and it's definitely having some challenges. And, I realized one day, I was just joking with you guys, I was at the gym and doing a set of 10 bench press and I'm like winded. You know, I couldn't even walk up the steps to get to the gym. I said, there's got to be something more than this, right? So I long for the days of being in great physical shape. I mean, I was in shape, but a different type of shape, clearly. But I started with a friend who was a runner, and she said, "Hey, come run at the track with me." And I'm like, "Run?" I'm like, "You kidding me? I'm 270-pound meathead." I'm like, "Why would I want to run? Why would I want to do any of this stuff?" And I went to the track with her. We ran a couple miles, and then it was kind of like, what else can I do? And I don't know, and behold, about 3 months later, I weighed about 255 pounds, I think at the time, signed up for my first marathon running race. I felt like I could eat the people next to me at the starting line. But I towed the line and I finished it that day. And it was one of the worst, but the best experience of my life, right? I was in excruciating pain the next day. But it was like, what else what else could I accomplish? And I started running and I just felt great. I got that euphoria, that runner's high month over month over month, and ran a couple more marathons. About a year later, qualified for Boston. I was down to about 190 pounds probably. And after that, I ran my first ultra marathon, but unfortunately fractured a bone in my right foot at the time and still ran it anyway because I'm stubborn and that's the way we do it. And ran the race. And after I was done, I was injured for a while and I was, okay, now what, right? I had to turn my energy to something else. And of course, like so many people listening, I read the phenomenal book by Lynn Cox, Swimming to Antarctica. And I was very inspired by her journeys and decided to pitch to a friend who had recently lost her father about doing a charity swim across the English Channel. And her family sponsored my swim, and we came together and started a fund at the Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. And, for the next decade, that's what I continue to raise money for. It's a very important, it's why I do what I do. Swam the English Channel July of 2010. Can't believe almost 10 years ago. It's just crazy to say that. And from there, went and got a corporate sponsor. Just absolute blessing. Every dollar went right to the kids. He paid for everything, and everything went to the hospital. It was just a true blessing. And where I met so many phenomenal people, traveled the world for the next 3 summers, 3 years, give or take, and accomplished the Ocean 7 on August 29th, 2013. And after that, just kind of took a little break and got back into running and started a family, and have 2 beautiful children now. And, just at this point, I've been really kind of sticking to running. It's not that I don't want to swim. It's just that, I can go out and run a 100-mile foot race for, $200, and a English Channel costs just a little bit more than that. But at the end of the day, I love being a crew, a race director for the Three Rivers Marathon swim that I've had annually since 2013 in Pittsburgh. So many amazing people that I've met have come through those, come and swim in the rivers around Pittsburgh, which I'm truly passionate about. And yeah, since then, just traveled and like I said, just really enjoyed working with people to help them accomplish their swimming dreams. And I'm all about giving back to such an amazing sport where I've met so many amazing people. And I am very excited for the future of more marathon swims. I'm working on that. And but at this point, I've been a speaker the last 10 years. I've been in wealth management for the last 15 years. And working from home is not that challenging as far as work goes. It's a little challenging when I'm here taking care of a 2 and a 3-year-old running around like crazy, but making the best of the times right now and just getting out wherever I can and exploring nature. So life is good.
Just a couple of things for our viewers. At his heaviest weight, he was about 122 kilograms. And when he ran Boston, he was at about 86 kilograms. So that helped our international guests figure that out. One of the things you talked about was sponsorship. And it's one of the things that a lot of people don't do well. And I'll let people know what it is you said, because you said it quickly. The really successful people that do this, they get a corporate sponsor to pay some or all of their fees. They set up a funding page, and it means that every single dollar or every euro that somebody gives to the Children's Hospital goes directly to the Children's Hospital. Mm-hmm. It doesn't go to the swimmer, doesn't go to the sponsor. There's no strange or unusual kind of admin fees from that end. Where it gets poor is when somebody says, look, I'm raising money to do a big swim. And when they're done, the swim cost about all the money that they raised from individuals, and it leaves a really bad taste. And even with the best intentions of the world, I've seen some swimmers really feel terrible and be seriously wounded by the criticism they get in that situation. So I applaud you for the way you went about it, which is the correct way. You did leave out one reasonably important part of your entire marathon swimming career. I know you got a lot of awards, you picked up a lot of trophies, but you also met that sort of gorgeous woman that's your wife and helped you along with those children. You forgot to mention that part.
Well, Ned, life takes us some different ways. Unfortunately, Allie and I are not together. But I will say that our children are our priority, and they are just absolutely beautiful, 2 perfect children. And it's marathon swimming has allowed me to meet so many incredible, phenomenal people, and because of the sport, because of reading that book, today, the experiences that I've had and the people I've met and my kids and their mother and us, and the focus that we have for their future is just so bright. And but no, you're 100% right. It's the people you meet in life, and like I said, sometimes things don't work out, but at the end of the day, it's for me, my example that I want to leave for my children is the reason I live. All right, and obviously continue forward into the future with everything that I want to do and accomplish, is to have them right there at the start line, the finish line, God willing, to see that example of strength that I received, that I was blessed to receive from my grandparents and my parents, and just continue to pass that along.
Bring us back through your marathon swimming career, your favorite moments and the most difficult times, in that order.
I mean, the most difficult swim, hands down, people ask me, what was your toughest one? Everybody has a toughest one, right? There's no, you can't say like, oh, this one is guaranteed to be your hardest, so this one is guaranteed to be your hardest. I thought when I started all this that the North Channel would have been the hardest one, and it wasn't. For me, it was Suguru, which I had the pleasure of having Steve with, and I always accredit him to saving my life many times over, because if he wasn't there to help me along, to help my brother, who was very anxious about everything that went on that day. That was back in July 10th, 2012. And, we started that day and it was pretty rough out there. I slipped and fell on the rock that I climbed out on right off the start, And I remember looking at my arms, and I got some blood coming down on my legs. And I'm like, oh, and I hear them yelling from the boat, take it easy. I'm like, hey, okay, great, thanks. And I remember looking out over that ocean. It was very foreboding. And I just said, the amount of money that my sponsor, that we paid to get here, and to have everybody here. And I wasn't going to, wait around and give it another couple goes over the next couple of years. I was there. I was getting it done. And Mother Nature doesn't always cooperate, as we all know. So you can't, whenever it's truly difficult out there, it's not like you can fight through absolutely everything. But, I was lucky enough that day. We got about 8 hours in. And I remember Steve and I talking a couple of days before, and we were thinking, it might be about an 8-hour swim, 8, 9 hours, whatever. And I get out there, and I'm like 8 hours in, I'm looking across, and I'm like, I am nowhere near Hokkaido at this point, and I'm like, oh. So I'm like, there's something in my mind. I'm like, there's something they're not telling me, and I just kept thinking to myself, I'm like, they're gonna have to drag me out of this water. Like, I'm just going stroke for stroke. And I remember it getting colder, the sun's going down, and I remember Steve talking about how the Japanese Coast Guard didn't want people in the water after dark, and all these things are going through my head, and I'm seeing things swimming in the water below me. I'm running in the fishing nets, and I'm just like, this is brutal. But it was hour after hour. I'm stuck in, I guess it was like an eddy more or less, and I'm paralleling the shore, not going anywhere. And I remember them saying, how far am I? 5 miles every hour. How far am I? 5 miles. How far am I? 5 miles. Eventually, it's like, just keep swimming, So I just kept just stroke after stroke after stroke, and that was hands down. That was hands down the hardest day. 'Cause I think we came out around 15 hours, 55 minutes, which was about, give or take, twice what I was expecting to be in the water that day. And I got this video of Steve. I'm getting out of the water and back onto the boat, and Steve's throwing towels on me. He's telling my brother to come in, and they're hugging me, to keep me warm. And that was definitely the most challenging day of my life, and could not have done it without just an amazing crew there with me. After that, probably I had a lot of fun on the Gibraltar swim. That was a very simple one. We had a couple friends with us, Jamie Patrick, Oliver Wilkinson, Jen Schumacher, Michelle, Kim, myself. It's just fun to have everybody do that together. That was a lot of fun. Molokai. Yeah, Molokai is a whole nother beast, as we all know. Bringing my dad out there for that one. Having my brother and my dad on some of my swims, that was really cool, just to have them there, experience that with me. But, it's I remember the English Channel, and I always remember standing over the cliffs of Dover, looking over to France. And I remember sitting there one day thinking, how the hell did I get here? From being like a 50 freestyler, a marathon run I'm just like, it just overwhelms you, and I'm sure a lot of swimmers can share a similar story. Or, you start swimming in the English Channel, and you look up in the sky, the sun's starting to rise, and it's just like, this is amazing, like I'm swimming to France right now. Like, this is just, it's really overwhelming. And it's those kind of moments that I really cherish.
You talked about with Subaru, and it's often the case of the English Channel that somebody will train for 3 years. They've booked ahead of time. Their friends and family are over there. The weather's not great, and the pilot says it might be possible on Thursday.
Yeah.
and then often if the swimmer's smart, they let their crew chief make the decision. But often the swimmer is making that decision, and the decision's not an easy one, which is go out there. Just because it's rough now doesn't mean it's going to get calmer. Or pass on the swim, go home, which is about the most soul-destroying thing you can possibly do. Maybe or maybe not ever come back and have that potentially knot you forever. I guess I'm a little bit like you. I want to get wet. I don't want to go home without getting wet. And if I'm out there and all of the other boats have turned around and everybody else has quit, and I'm the last one to quit, I can kind of live with that.
I agree.
But being back at the airport, not having gotten wet is just a horrible experience.
Yeah, and I'm truly, and people, when I went through the Ocean 7, I mean, again, I was lucky enough, and again, I'll attest to Mother Nature giving me the opportunity to swim 7 times and knock them out one after another. Because, I have so many friends, like we all do, like you said, that have tried some channels over and over and over. And it's just, I give them all the credit in the world, you know, to just continue to come back year after year to challenge these swims that's routinely whip them. And it's not because they're not capable. It's because, you know, the Mother Nature doesn't cooperate. And, you know, I just think, you know, again, the tenacity for them to keep doing that over and over, I admire that tremendously. That is truly awesome.
Some of it is weather. Some of it's also physical. People get injured. And a large part of that is mental psychological.
Sure.
The number of people who quit an English Channel swim in the first 2 hours is substantial. And a lot of people will train and do their mandatory 6-hour swim. We had a famous case in Ireland. I won't give the name of the person, but at one point the swimmer just kind of couldn't swim anymore. And his father was on the boat and yelled at him, and he said, "What's wrong?" And the swimmer answered back, "I never swam this long before. I don't know what to do."
Oh my God.
Now, he recovered and completed the channel, but I love to tell the story because it's not always the conditions. It's also sometimes what you've trained for.
Oh yeah, well, without a doubt. I mean, the mental psychology of it is, and like you, I've seen people jump into Catalina and same thing be done within 45 minutes for no apparent reason other than they're certainly not cold at this point, right? They have certainly trained for the cold, but again, it's just the psychology of that swim starting at night. Some people that they struggle with that, or like in the North Channel, the second you take your first lion's mane jellyfish sting, you know, it's like, oh my God, and out of nowhere the water's only 13 Celsius, you know, and it's like, well, you know, get me the hell out of here. But like you, there's a lot that goes on up here that continues to push me past those walls, as people say, and they're like, oh, I don't think that would feel good. And it's like, no, it doesn't feel good to swim like 20 miles in freezing water. It doesn't feel good, you know. It doesn't feel good to run 100 miles. It hurts. It's those walls, those barriers that we push through are what make us stronger and more resilient every time, you know. And that's, you know, how I structured my Ocean 7 was kind of methodical, but it was really to have the North Channel last, because in 2010, you know, we look at the history of the North Channel. I mean, I think, Craig Lenning was the first American. Michelle was the second. I was a month later than her as the third. Craig did it in 2011. I did it. Michelle did it in July of 13. I did it in August of 13. But prior to that, I mean, there was, I want to say, I think I was only maybe like the 14th or 15th swimmer to do it, you know, and that was since 1947. So it had this like aura of like, this is the most, I think, oh, not trying to think. Kevin Murphy called it mile for mile the most difficult marathon swim there is, you know. And so many people, when you read these stories, you're like, this is just a truly brutal swim. And then it was like, once people started accomplishing it, it was almost like when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, right? You know, when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, within the next year, there were like dozens of people that did it, right? And I feel like the North Channel was almost kind of like that for so many years. Nobody went after it. Everybody was very, I don't want to say afraid, but it had a stigma of being a very, very difficult swim. And then once people started accomplishing it, it's like, okay, maybe we can go after this and get it done, you know. And now, I mean, I don't know how many there are now. I probably close to 75 or something people that have done it, which is truly remarkable when you show that over the last only couple of years that people knocked it out.
A couple of interesting things that have happened. So first, at this point, there are now 3 choices on boat pilot organizations. There's much more experienced crew. There are mentors all over the world who have done the swim.
Yep.
And the funniest one, which people talk about, probably before your time, but there's a group of swimmers up there called the Chunky Dunkers.
Chunky Dunkers, oh yeah.
And the Chunky Dunkers, they are delighted when people arrive. They take them in their arms and love them to death. They go swimming with them in the morning. They're there with a cup of tea when they come out. And it's funny, something small like that puts people at ease. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you did it, there was nothing to put you at ease in that place.
No, I tell you what, I remember Fergal, we spent some time up in Dublin. We went out, and just like you said, I remember that triggered in my mind. I remember we had some muesli and some hot coffee after a swim. And that was amazing. And the other memory I remember, Stephen Redmond. I remember following him as he was going about this journey too. And you talk about memories, and Munatones and I were over, and Stephen had, I think, tried once or twice and come back to Ireland, and he went back to Japan to try it again. And one of my probably favorite memories was the night when I finished that swim. It's about 16 hours. We came back on the boat, and all I remember is we came into the dock area, and I remember Steve like letting out this yell, and I see him like running around the side, and and everybody knows Steven. I mean, I haven't seen Stephen Redmond since that summer, and he still owes me a couple of my thermoses that I let him borrow. So don't think you're getting away with that, Steve. But anyway, he came over, and he was so excited that someone had completed that I had done the swim. He came over, and I'm crawling out of the boat, literally, because again, that was a rough swim. I'm coming out of the boat, and he just grabs me and just gives me this bear hug. He ends up like headbutting me, And as a former rugby player, I'm like, well, maybe this is how they do it in Ireland. I have no idea. So he like almost knocks me out as I'm getting out of the boat. But he was just so excited. He had so much passion and energy. But I'll never forget seeing him like run around the dock to get to where we were. It was that was special. I remember him just yelling about how he'd stayed up all night. He watched the tracker and all these things. I mean, the spirit of that and is something I'll never forget.
Talk to us about Gibraltar. I had a somewhat similar experience of swimming in a group of 4, good friends. I'll tell you my abiding memory of Gibraltar, but I want to hear the interplay of the 4 swimmers. Coming from a cold water place, my abiding memory of Gibraltar is the 4 of us coming back on the boat in our Speedos, wearing sunglasses without a shirt or a jacket or a wool cap or gloves or a scarf.
What time of year did you do it, Ned? What month?
It was summerish. It must have been July, August.
So what was the temperature then? Like 17?
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
23. What? I don't.
Wow.
It was marvelous temperature.
Yeah. I was gonna say.
How did the 4 of you keep pace? Wilkinson's quite a speedy character when he wants to be. Did somebody have to go up every now and then and pull his foot back, or?
Well, Oliver and I have been giving it to one another since I crewed his New York swim back in 2011. So I could sit here and beat up on Oliver and joke about it, but I don't want anyone to think that I don't like the guy. I love the guy. But no, Oliver is a phenomenal swimmer, as we all know. And so there was the 4 of us, and we definitely all had, I don't want to say varied speeds. I mean, we were definitely all in a good place. But that swim, remember when we did it, it was in early May. It was like the first week of May. So the water was 15. I think it was like 59.5 degrees or something like that, Celsius or Fahrenheit. And I think it was 15 something. So it was cool. It was cold, and we jumped in. And I remember Oliver being a little nervous before that swim because, and I know he's going to laugh at me for saying this, but, Oliver's very, like you said, he's fast. He gets in, he goes. His Manhattan record is evident of that. So we got in there, and Jamie and I, we had Oliver closest to the boat, right? So we had the boat, the rubber inflatable, the inflatable next to us, Zodiac, and Oliver was to the right. And then we had Jen, I believe Jen was next to Oliver, and then myself, and then Jamie was on the end, or I can't remember exactly without looking at the picture right now. But it was definitely, I know he was a little concerned because, you're right. He definitely had to kind of slow down a little bit from his normal pace, so the 3 of us could keep up with him. But it was luckily that day it wasn't really that rough out there, and it was 3 hours and 44 minutes. I'm pretty sure anybody can survive the water that long, right? Even if you are slowing a little bit. But it's definitely a challenge when you do a 4-way, because again, we had no idea. We're just like, hey, it'll be cheaper costs. We'll get, hey, I signed up to do it. And then all of a sudden, I think I was talking to Jen about it, and I was like, yeah, you should come do it with me. And Jamie was talking about it. I'm like, yeah, dude, come do it with me. And then Oliver came, and it was perfect, so it just worked out great. And then Michelle and Kim went the next day. But you know, we had an absolute blast, but that was challenging, especially when they're throwing the feed bottles out. You know, you got like four bottles going out, and they're getting like, you know, we're all like trying to drink our water and it's getting all mixed up. But yeah, that was looking back. I mean, you know, like I said, for 3 hours 44 minutes, you know, we were able to hold pace pretty well. And
for people who are thinking about doing those kinds of things, the fastest swimmer has to slow down. The slowest swimmer needs not to get a complex about keeping everybody behind.
Yep.
And on most big swims, you're alone, you set your pace, you do your thing. All of a sudden, you're in a pod of swimmers. And whether you like it or not, you're kind of reacting to the other people's rhythm and the stroke and the patterns. And you know, I've seen friends fall apart from it, and I've seen people come really together. For my group, we had a great experience at it. And,
yeah, I mean, Craig Lenning and I swam the Cook Strait together. You know, just reminiscing about that. And for all those who know Philip Rush, he's a very intense man, and you know, we got down there and he was very strict on what we had to do and do this, do that. But obviously we played around. We had a great time. But we got in there and we're swimming and, you know, I'm going at it. And then, you know, Craig is just a cold water machine. It was like, again, it was like 15 Celsius, 59, whatever it was. And he's like right in the middle. He's like, within the first hour or two, he's taking his cap off. He's like, I'm hot, you know, and you know, I mean, it's just, you know, everybody handles cold, like you said. I mean, I remember, and I'm not going to mention names, but I remember being at Scar and people are getting bumped with the kayakers and they're sitting there, you know, bitching about it. I'm like, come on. I'm like, you know, toughen up. You're fine. You know what I mean? Like your kayaker runs into you, smacks you in the head a couple times with an oar. So what? You know what I mean? Move on. You know, you'll survive. And I never understood why some in endurance sports, how a swimmer or a runner or anybody could ever get mad at their crew, you know, because it's like, they're there volunteering. They're there helping you out. They're there getting seasick. I mean, I remember my crew on Catalina, you know, I mean, they're throwing up one side and then they're feeding me on the other. You know what I mean? I would 10 times rather be in the water swimming, I think we'd all agree, than sitting on a boat, dry heaving for hours on end, you know, being like, oh my God, this person is never going to get there, you know? So all the respect and love to the crew. And, you know, I really encourage, I mean, don't, you know, pick your crew for people that know if you have a weakness, like they have to know it, you know, and you can't pick a crew that doesn't know you, you know, or you don't know them, or you don't know if they can handle it, because it is, I mean, in some cases more demanding to be a crew member than it is to be the swimmer, you know, and they have to be able to handle that. So, you know, that's why on three of my swims, I had my brother, my dad, you know, and on the other swims, I mean, we handled it well. I mean, so that's definitely a key point, is you got to make sure you have a good crew, because, you know, the last thing you want is to be getting frustrated and upset out there with something they're not doing right, you know, and then having to mentally overcome that, aside from having to do the swim itself.
So you're one of the swimmers that I love, because having been a prima donna swimmer, having had all these crew volunteer their lives to helping you out, you turned around and organized the swim to raise money for charity. Talk to us about the Three Rivers Swim in Pittsburgh, and as well, in 1969, how many people were swimming in those rivers in Pittsburgh?
Well, if anybody knows the history of Pittsburgh, I mean, we are the steel town. I'm a huge, for the first 36 and a half years of my life, I lived there. You know, I am a huge ambassador for our city. You know, America's most livable city, voted a couple times by Forbes magazine. I could go on and on, but regardless, there was a very long period of time where we produced the steel for the entire world. And what came along with manufacturing like that was a tremendous amount of pollution in the rivers and the air. It was definitely a steel town. It was definitely a manufacturing town. It was the town you came home from the mill and you were completely covered, including a lot of my ancestors who worked in the mines, on the railroads, and in the steel industry. But the Three Rivers Swim, I came up with the idea right before I swam the North Channel, actually. I took it as my final long swim about 3 weeks prior to going to Ireland. And it is 30 kilometers. About 18, like I said, about 18.6 miles, give or take. And it's about 10K in each river. So there's 3 separate rivers. You start the first leg, you go up and around in the Ohio River. then you come through the Monongahela River, and then you finish up and back in the Allegheny River. You pass, if people are familiar with swimming, Manhattan, obviously Pittsburgh is nowhere near the size of Manhattan, but, you're swimming under a lot of very beautiful bridges. Pittsburgh has more bridges than Venice, Italy, if you can imagine. So we have quite a few bridges, and that's something that the swimmers always remark is a really beautiful thing to swim underneath. And we have the great scenery, passing the major ballparks, the football stadium, downtown, the point, finishing. It's a very it's home for me. But to your point, Ned, many years ago, people, including today, would not even think of jumping in that river, right? I've had people when I was out there swimming some days, they would call the police on me and the boat would come up and they would say, oh, it's just you, And I always laughed and I'm like, what part of me swimming parallel to shore against the current, wearing a Speedo cap and goggles makes you think that I'm drowning right now? You know what I mean? So I've been rescued more than a few times, but regardless, it's worked out great. We have, we've had some pretty awesome swimmers come through there. I mean, Sarah Thomas has she has the record for the women, and I have to chuckle, actually, I think overall, but she came and did that swim a couple weeks before she went to Loch Ness, and as we all know about Loch Ness, that water is frigid up there, and so I felt bad that she came and did my swim because I did it in August that year, and it was like water was like 80 degrees. It was horrible, and I felt bad that she was training in that water. And then a couple weeks later, she goes and swims Loch Ness. But I don't think there's a person in the world that can doubt the tenacity and fear to her nature. I mean, she's this incredible person. But anyway, getting back to it, this swim is a charity swim, and to me, it's just again giving back to the community I love and showing Pittsburghers that, these are three beautiful waterways that are a hell of a lot cleaner than what it was 50 or 75 years ago. And can't be afraid to get out there and venture.
Give us a number, the number of people volunteering for the swim and the number of people swimming. The rough numbers.
For the Three River Swim?
Yeah.
So on average, we have, we usually have about 12 to 15 swimmers. I try to cap it at 15. I'm a big proponent. I don't want to have a lot of people out there. I cap it at 12 hours too, which a lot of people have commented, have asked, hey, can I swim later in the dark? I have no problem doing that. And the reality is it's not because you can't swim in the dark. It's just a safety reason. You're on a major waterway and you have boats zipping up and down there. And at night, I don't want anybody out there, So I know that can be a deterrent for some swimmers, that you have to maintain pace to get it done. But on average, like I said, we've had about 12 to 15 swimmers come through. A couple guys, John Humenick, he's done it twice. Chris Groff's done it twice. They've both signed up for a third time. So
how many volunteers to accommodate?
So I run it similar to Manhattan Swim. I have 2 kayakers per swimmer. So on average, at least 30 kayakers. Most people do bring their own 1 or 2 kayaks, but at least, I'd say usually about half of those are just, my friends and family from Pittsburgh volunteering. We got the River Rescue out there, Coast Guard, police. They've been amazing. It's really funny. Some parts of some races you have to get all these permits and everything. And when I first started this and I went to the River Rescue and they're like, you want to go swim in the rivers? Have at it. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, nobody cared. It was like, okay, fine. But safety is our number one priority. And we have, we have, Josh Haynes, who runs the Lake Erie Swim. He's out there with his Sea-Doo. We got a couple powered boats, but the kayakers, they're always, and everybody's very close to shore. And it's typically, you can walk almost everywhere along the shoreline. So you got people on the shoreline, you got people on either side of the swimmer, you got powered boats. So safety is a huge thing. So yeah, we got, I'd say an average of 40 to 50 volunteers that, to pull that off every year. So
I want to hammer through that point again, which is you've done your big swims. Hopefully you've got some more in you, but you've done your big swims. You're now putting back into the community of the sport. And for all the swimmers out there, that's great you signed up for that big swim. Think about this swim in Pittsburgh. There's almost 3 times as many volunteers working for nothing for a charity cause, and I am a prima donna, so I can say it, to let the prima donna swimmers have their fun for the day.
Yeah.
So for all the prima donna swimmers out there who've been taking and taking and taking and taking and taking, learn from Darren. Your time is now to put back in the sport one way or another.
Yeah.
Organized, volunteer, kayak crew, coach, mentor, sponsor, something.
Yeah. No, I cannot agree with you more, and I stress that so much. And I have found so much more self-fulfillment from helping others accomplish their goals than for me to accomplish my goals. And there is nothing like crewing for somebody. Ned and Steven, I know you guys can agree to this, and just seeing what they go through, right? And knowing what they're going through. Like, it's one thing if you have my dad and my brother there, but they haven't done marathon swims, they don't know what it feels like. But when you're there on the boat and you see that swimmer going through challenging times, you know how to handle that situation. And whenever they're getting into that bad place, whether that's you jumping in to swim with them, you telling the crew, all right, they need this, this, and this, or knowing what to say to that swimmer to get them over that hurdle, get them over that hump, that is huge. And we as swimmers have that, log journal in our minds of what we've gone through, and we know what we need at that point. And that's why these swimmers need us more than anything, for as they progress right through their swimming. And now it's about giving back. And I can't urge people enough. Just give back any way you can. I love it. Sorry, I lost you for a second.
Thank you very much for your time today, and
Oh,
nice to catch up again.
Good to see you both. Thank you so much.
Take care.